interesting sidebar. And the other thing that I think that I like about channel healing more than evocative healing, and this is another good point to make to people who ask you this question, is that, you know, if you see energy and there's a block on Ruth's left shoulder for some reason, well, you know, or through an intuitive process, you learn that there's a block on Ruth's left shoulder or something. Everyone, give Ruth your energy. You know, as a willful healer, chances are what you're going to do is you're going to begin to work on that block, and you're going to begin to work on eliminating that block. You know, that may do absolutely nothing for her condition. Like, I mean, her shoulder may feel better, you know, but and it may not remanifest in her shoulder. You know, and instead she may need hip replacement surgery or something weirder down the line. You know? It doesn't necessarily deal with removing the patterns that are manifesting that specific condition, and that's a difference between channel healing and will healing. Because, you know, I'm not, when I walk into a healing session, the only decision that I'm making is whether or not I'm going to listen to, you know, whoever's whispering things to me about where I'm supposed to put my hands. You know, that's the extent of it for all practical purposes. You know, when you come right down to the core, basic stuff of it all. That would have been completely different 5 years ago. You know, 5 years ago I would have been going through this huge compendium of techniques to tear that block off of her shoulder and, you know, seal it up and all of that stuff. And now that's completely different. You know? The first person that I ever worked on with Reiki, and this was very fortunate for me because otherwise I might have just tossed it out, or, you know, it might have taken a significantly lesser role in my life, was this barber who had, do you remember this? Pat Bowen.
Who called you?
Yeah. And yeah, and
well, people in Just Reiki 1 class were talking about getting so much heat from his hand it was like being burned. His friend of mine broke her wrist, and so I called you. I thought that was right after you had gotten it.
Right after I took 1 and 2 from Jimmy.
So go ahead.
And yeah, she shattered her wrist, and she was a barber, and she didn't want this high healing time also. And so I think, you know, well, okay, I've got this sheet of hand positions, but, you know, the will healer in me is just pulling me towards that wrist, you know. I don't know, I'll throw it to the wrist. And, and I thought, no, you know, this is a new thing. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to go through the hand positions one by one, you know, blah. And so, you know, I don't remember if I memorized them or if I had a cheat sheet hanging up. But I do remember that I just made some wooden candle holders and one caught on fire towards the end of it. But that's how deep I was in trance. But I didn't notice it until it was this huge fuller. You know. But so I started, you know, work my way all the way down the front system of the body, and finally, you know, I get done with the back, and yeah, you know, now we can heal her. You know, now we'll move on to that wrist. You know. And clamp, you know, my hands go around the wrist. And I get up, you know, and I'm really anxious to hear what she's going to tell me, you know, because this is the first time that I've ever used this, and I really did put all the other stuff that I knew on the shelf for the session to give it a fair try. And she said, well, there were a few points where I really felt it. And so I was thinking, the wrist, gets the wrist. You know? And she said, nothing really when you were working on my wrist. She said, I didn't really feel anything. Yeah. So what she did tell me was that when I placed my hands on the top of her head, she saw these huge blue streaks of energy going down and had this huge visualization of her wrist completely reforming, and all of the, and that repeated itself sort of in different ways in other parts of her body, you know. And I just kind of looked at that and scratched my head, you know, and thus began my healing, my exploration of the evocative side of all of this, you know. But what that, thank God, you know, because I mean, if it would have just been the wrist, then I would have been just like, oh, well, I'll just combine it with all the other stuff that I do, and it'll be faster. But that's not what happened at all. So, you know, the universe was very fortuitous there.
Before I even heard of Reiki, I was real active with the ARE, the Intercasey Association for Research and Enlightenment, and I kind of became known as a healer in the area, the Denver area, whenever they would have a retreat, and all I would do would be put my hand over the top of their head and ask that the healing go to wherever it was needed in the body. Now, that's what you're talking about, isn't it? I mean, you
Something
just-
very similar.
And, you know, somebody's cancer would heal, or somebody's throat would get better, or somebody's ear would get better. But all I was doing was sending energy into the top of the head.
What this proved to me was that something very little touched on in the well healing community, and that is that, you know, just because someone had fell down and broke their wrist doesn't mean that there's not some kind of weird pattern that manifests itself in other areas of the energy field that can take care of that much faster than healing them, so they don't, you know, fall down and sprain their ankle the next time or whatever.
And you don't have to set that pattern up.
No, and you know, you lay your hands on and it takes care of itself.
Mhm.
Had I been using my former methods of healing, I mean, okay, her wrist probably got a lot better and all that, and her did, you know. But she was looking at needing surgery, and then she didn't need surgery, and
Yeah, I thought from his scientific method, I said it would be really cool because the doctor took an x-ray and he said, you need to come back in a week. And if it doesn't look, you know, if you haven't healed, we're going to have to do surgery. And he thought that they would. But she insisted on at least getting a chance. And so we only had a week span within which to work. And the doctor didn't say it was a miracle or anything, but he's like, yeah, you're fine. And he didn't let her take her cast off. I think she eventually just took it off because she was my hairdresser, and she just couldn't work. And so she was ironing with the cast. But yeah, it was really interesting. Unfortunately, she ended up taking Reiki for me.
yeah, she did. That was, yeah, so, you know, the doctor was smart enough taking the cast off, so if anything would have happened, we got a butt suit. But, so he said to leave it on for like 2 more weeks or something. Should have gone on for months, you know.
She was very happy because she needed the work.
You know, we're all in this community, so we've all had that stuff. It's a fairly regular, stuff like that's a fairly regular occurrence. That's cool, because I totally forgot about that. What that told me, though, was that, you know, here's a self-directing energy that will root out sort of the other problems that, you know, the other systems of healing don't take care of. And I've noticed that over time, all of the people like me, or most of the people like me that started off needing the, you know, insert slot A into slot, tab, needed all of that instruction, have come over to the other side of the fence, and notice intuition is grown, all of that's grown. So, you know, that more stuff that you'll have to feel as you're out there. So that's, you know, I use metaphors like that to describe it. Okay, let's get back to this. Where were we? Would anyone like a break? Has this been very long? Okay, well, we'll take a break then, and we'll get back to concentration. One of the things that I will say regarding breaks is that, and stuff like this in general, you know, if you're going to travel and you're going to teach, keep in mind that, you know, I mean, I'll be gone a day or something, buddy. And one of the key points in this is that, you know, in this room, brought together, or 20 some odd people, all with a very similar interests. I mean, this is an excellent networking opportunity. And this is an excellent sharing of information opportunity. This is a great time for, and you'll get a class list with everybody's name, address, and phone number. So you'll have that resource as well. You don't have to go around and quiz everybody for the most thing. You probably should have said that ahead of time. But nonetheless, keep that in mind as you're teaching as well, that what you're sort of leaving behind is the symbiotic self-supporting group structure as well. Okay, let's get back to a question, which I went really tangent on, but that's okay because it's just stuff that would come later. Regarding the information and all of that about Reiki and how you explain the attunement procedure despite the fact of all this bickering and fighting and all. And what I said was essentially, or what I started to say was essentially that, you know, everything that I've written, everything that everybody else has written is just kind of, you know, garbage. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. I mean, I work hard on what, you know, it takes a great deal of time to bang out what I do, certainly, and I'm sure that's true of everyone else. But what I mean by that is simply that we're dealing with something that's rather ineffable. You know, there's not a lot of paradigm descriptive stuff that's going to be that's going to be easy to spout when people ask you what this is. I mean, what do you say? Do you say that this is a hands-on healing medium? Do you say this is healing with energy? Do you throw in some quantum babble? I mean, what do you do with it exactly? What I do with it, and what I think, there's a guy sitting at the back of the room, and all the energy starts off. His name's Tom Brown. He's decided to videotape this today. And one of the neat things about Tom is that, I'll be sitting there trying to explain it to somebody, and this happened with one of Ruth's, somebody that she rented space from, this legal thing, where we had this kind of Reiki gathering at this place, and at her needle office one time in Colorado Springs, and we were all kicking around what this was, and it really became an answer this guy's question meeting about because he just kept asking, and so finally Tom did what he always does. He just kind of got up and he said, well, would you like the experiences? He asked first. Right? And the guy said yes, and he just put his hands on his shoulder, and it blew the guy's mind. I thought it was just incredible. So that's what I say in terms of, how do you explain this? How do you, you really can't, I mean, there are a lot of books out about Reiki, and, I have ones here that I think present interesting information, and there are a lot of ones that are just soft, and where people are clearly going through that whole despair of prose problem, trying to grasp, how they're going to define this, and I know that problem well, because, this is my job, and to a certain extent, is to try to define this with an incoherent structure, and one of the things that's really difficult is it's easy to define to people who are in holistic, New Age, whatever you want to call this community. It's much easier to define with them because we share a common language where these metaphors are already vibrant and alive and easy to communicate. But go into a hospital, talk to a bunch of doctors, or be in this conference room with all these people. I'm grabbing, I'm just grasping it like any straw I can lay my hands on, I usually, I'll maybe go off into Reiki and things. I'll do my best to try to find some kind of middle ground there, but man, without this New Age language, that can be a real toughie. So what I say is what you're left with is what Tom, I think, really starts with a lot of the times, and it's an admirable thing, and that is the experience. That's why I said, all the writing is really garbage. What matters is the energy. The tips and the techniques and all of that, they're very nice, they're very important, but the energy is the key component of it all, so keep that in mind. And along those lines, the attunement procedure that I personally favor, it's actually a distance attunement procedure, but the actual in-person touch attunement procedure that I favor, and we're on this now, so we're going to talk about it, is a variation, a very slight variation on the one that William Rand came up with. Because, I'm going to present open case biographies of all these people as I've come across them out there and the information that I've accumulated and all of that. But I will say this, the man put together a kick-ass attunement procedure. It's very nice. It's extremely powerful. One of the things that it has that not a lot of other things do have is this whole charging procedure at the beginning, which I find to be a very nice ritual. And it's almost weird for me to go back and try to do it without it now, because it feels kind of weird. It feels a little weak, like there's something missing. There are two differences between the way. Well, actually, there are several differences between the traditional attunement procedures, as William spelled them out here in this book, which, like I said, is up here for you to all peruse, and what the system has evolved to that I use. And they're subtle. Essentially, my attunement procedures go like this these days. I think it's important to touch people. That seems to be what people want, You can probably attune someone at a distance far more effectively than you can attune them with a laying on of hands attunement method, simply because your energy field is much further out of the way and it's a cleaner shot. But that's a really difficult juxtaposition to get people to buy into. Irving first, who we'll probably talk about shortly, has that problem with his stuff in Oakland where he teaches. And he doesn't like to travel, so people kind of come to him. But he prefers to do attunements at a distance because he finds them to be much more powerful. Yet he knows that at the first level of any system he's initiating people into, he's going to have to touch them because otherwise they're not going to buy into it. I mean, that's just his own experience, and people just expect it as part of the experiential thing. You can't, they don't believe necessarily you can phone it in until they're a bit more sensitive to it. Now, the differences lie in the fact that in the traditional, in William's thing, he doesn't plant symbols into the third eye. And nearly every attunement procedure out there in the Reiki community does plant symbols into the third eye. And that seemed to be a really deficient, lacking thing. So I put that in. And there's a point in, and this is the attunement procedure that you have in the books in front of you from me. It comes to a point where the hands are open in front and you're kind of planting the symbols into the hands. And it comes at that point because there's a strong vortex of energy in the hands, and there's a real strong link of energy between the third eye and that vortex. So that's the reason that was chosen. As, I mean, you can put it anywhere really if you want to, it's going to work. But that was chosen as being the most powerful of the available places. Other differences that exist are still fairly important. A lot of times you'll notice the slapping in the hands. I mean, did many of you have that experience? And there's a bang, you know. I don't do that. Though Kathleen Milner does do it in her attunement procedures, and I do it when I do a Kathleen Milner attunement procedure, out of respect, because I do consider that a very separate system of Reiki, a separate energy and all that. And I'm going to honor that process. But in this, I think, here you have someone in this just extremely meditative state, and then drop way down. And what are you going to do? You come along, you bam, I mean, what a cruel thing to do, sort of, And so I really wondered if that was at all an important thing to do. And I have a core group of 6 clairvoyants that I